Now I'm going to demo the piping foot and then the piping foot with the cording guide. In the instructions that come with the foot, it recommends that the machine is set for a chain stitch, which I have done. And it also recommends that we should use the needle in the E position rather than D, which is the default. And that doesn't really work well for me. Maybe that was for the cover lock machine. I feel like I like the positioning better with the needle in the default position. And I have the piping foot on right now, which the reason this works really well for piping is it has a groove on the underside here. And that groove, see if I can get this to stick in here properly, that groove holds the piping in place so it doesn't wobble all over the place. The needle just goes right along the side of the cording so that you get a nice snug piping rather than it being all wobbly. And the instructions do recommend using a 1/4 to 5/8 inch, 1/4 to 5/8 inch cord, or 1.5 to 2.0 millimeters cord. Then they recommend that you cut a strip of fabric on the bias that's 1 inch wide. I find it hard to manipulate fabric, an inch wide piece of fabric folded over. My fingers are large, so I have cut this 1.5 inches, and that works better for me. So you want the piping sticking out, not the piping, the cording sticking out. And we're going to fold it over. And, wrong sides of fabric together. Then you need to get the cording and the pipe and the fabric underneath your foot with the cording in the groove. And then once you have that, you put your foot down, get your cording lined up in the fabric, and then it's just a matter of stitching down. And making sure that you keep your piping in the middle, cording in the middle. And there you have it. Very nice piping with a chain stitch. Of course, if this were an actual project, I would have used navy blue thread, but I used the white so that you could see the actual stitching. Now I could use this same foot to sew the piping into my project, keeping the piping cording in that groove. Now, where the needle is right now, it is to the left of the piping, which if you had a lot of fabric here, probably wouldn't work that well. You would want to move the needle over to the E position where it'll be on the right-hand side of your cording inside the piping. So to show you what I mean, as I put this in place, pull my cording up here. So I have it, the cording in the groove, and if I were to bring my needle down, it's going to sew on the left-hand side of the cording. I need to move that. If I want to position my fabric like this, where the bulk of my fabric is to the left, I need to move my needle over to the right-hand side of the piping. Now I've moved my needle over to the E position, so it'll be on the right-hand side of the piping. And I could have created my piping from the very beginning with it in this configuration, but I would then have to, instead of sewing like this, as instructed in the instructions, with my cording in the groove underneath the foot, I would have to have the fabric to the right so that the needle would come down on the right hand side of the cording once the needle is moved over to the E position, which is on the right hand side. So I'm going to reposition my fabric and my piping. And because I have more fabric to the left, that's why I moved my needle to the right, so that it would fall on the right hand side of the piping, not on the left, because that's not going to work. Make sure I have it in the groove there. That feels good. And get everything lined up. Have the edge of the piping fabric on the edge of my front and back fabric. And I'll show you what this looks like. So then we have this nice piping inside of the two pieces of fabric, and the foot held everything in place where it should have. So as I was saying before, if you want to place your fabric so that the piping is on the right hand side, because you have more fabric this way and you don't want to kind of get it squished over here, moving your needle over to the right to the E position would be necessary, so that when you stitch, you're stitching along the right hand side of the cording within the piping. If you keep it in the D position, what will happen is you've sewn on the left hand side of the cording, and you end up with something like this, which is not as attractive as something where you actually see the piping. So just bear in mind that depending upon how you place your fabric in position, that you want the cording running in that groove, and you're going to want to sew the sides of the fabric together so that it creates the piping. The piping foot also comes with this cording guide, which snaps into place and provides a rounded tunnel and a square tunnel to enable us to do these kind of interesting corded tucks, where you place your cording through the hole there, and with a cover stitch you sew on either side. Or we can use some decorative trim and have some nice effects. So we're going to start with the cording. Do some corded tucks here. So I have this set in cover stitch wide. There we go. And that's going to go underneath and go in the tunnel that we used previously to make the piping. Then we bring the fabric on top. Probably have to reposition the cording. Just can feel that it is where it should be. Put the foot down. And then the hole in the guide that we snapped on, that the cording is going through, should hold it in place so that we can do some nice cording here. Let's get rid of this extra long thread here that's being annoying. And let's take that out and take a look at it. So now you have this nice raised effect, and you could use decorative thread and get all sorts of different effects. So that's with piping or cording in place. Now to do some decorative stitching on ribbon with the cording guide, we need to switch from cover stitch mode to overlock mode. So I'm going to demo that now. So in order to do that, it's very simple with this machine. I pull to the right and this opens up. There's a piece here that I just push down and pull out. This is for cover stitch. It has a B on it, and then I get my A piece, which is for overlocking, and then slide that into place. And oh, there's one more thing I need to do. There's a slider here that I need to slide to the right, and now I'm in overlock or serging mode. So pretty simple as far as switching from cover stitch to serging. So I now have this set up in 3-thread flat lock wide with the cording guide in place. So I have 1/4 inch wide ribbon here that I'm going to stick through the guide and do the 3-thread flat lock stitch over the top for a decorative effect. Okay, so we have this decorative effect on the ribbon, and you can take this decorated ribbon and then make it still yet another effect by braiding that. So you can take this and braid these pieces. So you can, as I said, braid that and make your own decorative trim to match whatever you're making based on the thread that you put in the loopers. So pretty easy.